actually going to ask Hussein to take the first part of that question. You had some thoughts about coverage between Chicago and about the Chicago case and New York case, but let's try and move along as quickly as we can. I really want to get as many questions as possible.
I'll try to make that point as quickly as possible. I mean, I do think, though, that the Post deserves credit for the work that it's done on that issue. LA Times, too, and Pierre Thomas.
Thank you. Your check is in the mail.
No, but I mean, I sincerely believe it. And I think Pierre Thomas, ABC, has done a good job on TV. Or network TV is a very good job on this. But, yeah, I mean, you know, I think an issue to do with the way that civil liberties and the war on terrorism is covered that I did want to talk about, you know, has to do with the way in which terrorism arrests are presented by the government, both at the national and at the local level. It just, you know, to make the point as briefly as possible, succinctly as possible, on Thursday there were two major arrests in anti-terrorism stings. Right? The one in Albany that was where these two guys thought that were agreed to launder money they thought was associated with the sale of a shoulder-fired missile that they thought was going to be used to assassinate a Pakistani diplomat to punish Pakistan for its support of the United States in the war on terror. This was announced in Washington, not in Albany. It was announced both, but it was announced in Washington by by a deputy attorney general and a deputy director of the FBI. A very high-level, emphasized, high-profile announcement. The same morning in Chicago, the local U.S. attorney in Chicago, nobody else, announced the arrest of a man called Greg Nettles, who was arrested with 1,500 pounds of what he believed was ammonium nitrate. And he was involved similarly in a sting. His plan was to blow up a U.S. federal courthouse in Chicago. And I think it would be very difficult to look at these two sting operations and say with any degree of seriousness that one is a more serious case than the other. Yet they were treated extremely differently, and there was concomitant difference in press coverage. I think there's almost no one who follows the media in this country who isn't aware of the Albany arrests. I think there are a lot of people who don't know much about what happened in Chicago. And I think that this sort of discrepancy has a clear impact on the cultural perceptions in our country about the nature of political violence in the United States, who poses a threat, who might be dangerous. And I don't understand why the Albany arrest, which is not linked to any of these Al-Qaeda arrests that we've seen, or anything else, an isolated sting, is somehow bigger news story than the one in Chicago. It strikes me as at least being equal. The other thing is that, and this is sort of a warning to metro journalists from around the country, is that local district attorneys and U.S. attorneys around the country have consistently been using dark hints about links to terrorism in trying to paint Arab American defendants in absolutely non-political cases in the worst light possible. A quick example, there's a guy called Jess Malley in Florida, a businessman who owns some businesses. He's accused of hiring illegal immigrants and laundering money to pay them, right? And in the bail hearing, the district attorney, or the U.S. attorney, told the judge that he should be denied bail because he has financial links with groups that advocate violence in the Middle East. The judge threw this out of court, I mean, just gave the guy bail and said that that was ridiculous and this is not a political case and don't try to, you know, don't try to kid me with that. But some of the local media took the bait, and it became the tourism for terrorism case. One station dubbed it. The man, by the way, sells souvenirs and has restaurants for tourists on that big strip in Orlando. So this is only one example. There have been many instances in the past 3-4 years in which non-political cases involving Arab American defendants have been the subject of these dark hints, and where unfortunately the media has charged down the road of screaming about terrorism when there's no such thing involved. So I would point to those two patterns as being very troubling, that somehow terrorism arrests are more significant when the defendants are American Muslims than if they're middle-aged white males, and when the cases seem at least equally serious, and in local cases where completely non-political, non-terrorism related cases become terrorism cases because of the ethnicity of the accused. And these are patterns that we've seen, and I think all media organizations should be cautious about falling into those traps.